Anyway, Overpopulation is a really simple ability. It basically makes creatures produce in half the time, as well as halving the minimum build time. So a lemming, of course, instead of taking, I think, minimum of 16 ticks to make, it takes 8 ticks to make. It's that sort of thing. It's not really a particularly fabulous ability because it comes with a shit-based creature, but it's probably its main use is for a cheesy level 1 or level 2 rush. But yeah, other than that, I mean, you can use it with a loner to make it like a lol sort of thing, because overpopulation and loner sort of cancel out in terms of their production, I suppose. Anyway, Pack Hunter. Pack Hunter is again a bit like herding, except it's 40% melee damage and range damage increase. So again, as I've said before, it's a very expensive ability. I hope that will be being fixed. But again, it's common. It's on 11 different creatures. It's very common. It's very, very powerful in the late game. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't come on very many good units at the late game. But yeah, I mean, you can see it's basically supposed to be an early game ability that's too expensive to be used in the early game. So if you're going to use Pack Hunter, though, you're probably going to be using it with as a single ability. So you're going to be maybe Hyena, thinking maybe Hyena, Hyena, what's it called, Tarantula. That's a or baboon tarantula, those sorts of things. At high levels, you can usually use the baboon whale, which used to be an abused unit, but it's not anymore because it sucks now. Um, Raven moose, raven with anything with horns at level 5 is pretty damn good. Lioness makes some great level 3 general combat and range units. The Piranha is a great unit, but no one ever uses it because, no one ever uses it because, no one likes piranhas. Chimpanzee is a shit unit, just don't use the Chimpanzee. Barracuda has great health, although, again, it's expensive. So, yeah. Okay, moving on to the Plague. Now, Plague is sort of an interesting ability. What it does is it makes creatures. It does, I suppose, 60 damage over time at level 1, and that increases up to, I think, about 120 or something damage at level 5. So really, it's an early game ability, and when I say an early game ability, it is ridiculously good as an early game ability. It can, as KV has said before many times, and I mean, the only reason KV uses it is because I abused it on him for a while. He got sick of it because he couldn't counter it, and suddenly he uses it a lot now. Um, but yeah, Plague is excellent at level 2. It means you can do a lot, and I mean a lot of damage to a huge. Basically, its main use is as a counter to spam units and also as a counter to mass range units. Melee units tend to shrug it off because they tend to have higher hit points, but for example, range units don't usually have that much. So you can think, if I can think of maybe, well, really all it's used on is the fox roach, and other than that, you might see a diplo roach every so often if someone's really stupid, but other than that, you won't really see it. Yeah, it's a early game ability. Now, you've got 3 poison abilities here: poison bite, poison sting, and poison touch. Now, you got pretty much 6 poison units because poison bite and poison sting are the exact same abilities, just that they had to be split up to avoid some annoying bugs that happened with poison. And poison touch comes on two different creatures. Okay, so poison bite and poison sting, really simple. All they do is they give poison to anything that the creature attacks. So if you've got, say, a Komodo dragon combo or a rattlesnake combo, if you attack the enemy creature, it's immediately poisoned. As I said earlier on in the video, what poison does is it makes creatures slower and take damage over time, as well as reducing the amount of damage they're able to dish out. So it's a very expensive ability, unfortunately, so that's probably why it's not used all that much. But yeah, that's basically what poison is. If you're going to use poison touch, usually use it on high level units, or Komodo dragon shield bugs are another fairly common unit that used to be used a lot. Now, Quill Burst, I won't really touch on this very much because Quill Burst is actually broken at the moment. It doesn't work. I don't know what Doggy did to it, but yeah, it doesn't really work. Basically, all it is a level 2 minimum poor man's electricity burst that does piercing damage. So, yeah. Now, Regeneration. Um, really simple. All it does is regenerates health over time. It's a bit expensive at lower levels, but yeah, I mean, it's another one of those abilities where you just put it on because you can. It's inherent, so of course, if you have a chameleon or walking stick combo, you'll be getting regeneration. But it is a very good ability. It's basically useful for everything. So yeah, just use it if you can, and if you can afford it, definitely put it on. Now, Sonar Pulse is another one of those abilities where no one really ever uses, because it's a sound beam tower. Basically, just does the exact same thing. What it does is, again, if I can relate it, whoops, if I can relate it to StarCraft, what it does is it's a bit like the Comsat station, Terran Comsat station, or Comsat Tower. I can't remember what it was called in StarCraft. What it does is you can trigger it, and it um, allows you to see in a certain radius. I think it's about 40 meters or something. In a certain radius, it allows you to see everything, including digging and camo units, in that area. So it's a great scouting ability. Other than that, really all you use it for is just, I suppose, anti camo. I suppose, anti camo and digging. Okay, so Stink Cloud is the next ability, and one of my favorite abilities actually, because what it does is, what Stink Cloud does is it makes a radius around the creature, a bit like what's it called, Electricity Burst and Quill Burst and whatever. And what this does is it makes all range damage, including sound beams and anti-air towers, all range damage does 0 inside that cloud. So you can and it has a variety of uses. I mean, you can use it with an air rush so that you put down a stink cloud and you can do all the damage you want inside that radius, and nothing can hurt your air units other than other air units. You can do that. You can use it as a anti-sound, anti-turtle, anti-sound beam um, creature. So, for example, because Stink Cloud only works on creatures, so for example, if you have Stink Cloud going off on your sound beams, the sound beams will still take damage from range units, but the creatures won't. So yeah, and it's also what it does also is, if a range unit is attacking a creature inside the cloud, the range unit moves into melee. So, and this, even if the creature moves out of the cloud, the range unit will still follow around. So you can actually use it, especially against someone who's not really microing very well. You can use it to force their enemy's range units into melee combat, which works wonders, as you can no doubt tell. Um, I find its main uses at level 5 as anti-Diplofish units. Other than that, it's just one of those abilities no one ever uses because A, it's expensive, and B, it takes micro, and people are too lazy to use it. Okay, anyway, as for our last ability, which is Web Throw, it's... I'm going to say it's an underpowered ability. What Web Throw does is it apparently... Someone failed miserably with the description there. But what it does is it, in a cone, a sonic cone, sonic-like cone, it makes all units within the vicinity immediately stop what they're doing, and they're basically frozen. They can't do anything. It's a bit like stasis again, in StarCraft, but your creatures can actually attack their creatures. And it also doesn't last quite as long. So yeah, I think it's about 15 seconds or so where the creatures can't do anything. What it's actually usually used for, though, is raiding, because what it does is it doesn't actually give out attack notices. So you can freeze henchmen. You can just run a fox spider up, undig, use web, dig again, and the henchman and until the other guy actually checks his lab or notices he's got suddenly 8 henchmen idle messages coming up at a time every 60 seconds, he isn't actually going to know that his henchmen aren't mining. So, I mean, a dead henchman is the same as an idle henchman is basically the same as a dead henchman that isn't dead. It's a henchman that's doing nothing and is completely useless. So, really, it's just the same as a raider. It disrupts the economy, but it makes it so that the enemy has no idea. Anyway, I hope that's all the abilities. So I hope that's helped you guys out there sort of get used to the Impossible Creatures abilities and see sort of how they work, what to be using them on, and hopefully, again, I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and this has been FiveLeafClover.